Hi everyone, it's Artem again today on storytelling, and I'm here today with Mike Bosworth, and I can't even start to describe how much this man has done to storytelling. For starters, he is creator of solution selling framework, co-founder of Stories Leaders back in the 1980s. He's been in sales since 1966, 76, I guess, from the
Don't make me too old.
no, I'm sorry. It's just amazing how much energy you bring to this world and how much passion you bring to this world of story. And the latest you've done is the Story Seekers and Mike Bosworth's leadership project. Am I right? Is that correct, Mike?
It's correct. Yes. No, we're good.
Okay, so I would like to ask you some questions based on your experience, just so that people watching this, sales, marketing, HR leaders, can develop their own storyteller skills. So, Mike, I know your story about coming to storytelling from Xerox back in '76 and understanding that stories build trust in the sales process. And I have a different story-seeking question. Could you share with me a story, for starters, where you felt the power and the value of storytelling, either in business or in sales? Like a moment when you felt its power.
Well, I go back to my grandmother when I was a kid, and I had lousy parents but great grandparents. And my grandmother, when she would tell a story, she would spend time on the setting. And that's the setting is the part that gets left out of so many business stories. She'd say, it was a cold winter morning in January in St. Paul. There were icicles hanging off the windows. The sky was crystal blue. My Uncle Byron was in his bathrobe. She'd really take the time to create a setting. And I don't know if we'll get into it today, but you know that we have a structure for stories with an arc, with a setting and a struggle and a turning point and a resolution and an arc. And so when I got into the story business in 2008, it's when I realized that the primary difference between top 20% salespeople who sell 80% of the business and the rest of them is not their IQ, it's not the number of hours they put into a week or anything, it's their natural ability to tell stories and connect and build trust through stories. And I've spent my career trying to help the bottom 80%.
That's great.
And so I realized then that the structure of a story, if practiced and if the story is constructed right, will allow engineers and financial people and computer scientists, the typically more left brain people who don't have that intuitive ability to connect and build trust. And so the power of story, to me, really hit me in 2008 because we can teach the bottom 80% of the sales force how to connect and build trust using story.
Great, thank you. That sounds really promising because there are great sellers out there, and I've known some of them, and the idea is to help the rest of us. Okay. Right. I loved your talk on TED where you talked about the Xerox investigation where they said that after 18 months, each salesperson has a slump. And it was such a shock for me because I have experienced it because I was in sales in engaging leadership projects, and engaging investigations. And I had this slump too, and I couldn't believe it. I was like doing everything right. So
Yeah.
you said that one of the great ways to establish contact is like saying, what do you do? And after the person answers this question, you just go, oh, I have a story about the person that does this
Right.
thing. That was really essential. Could you give me some more hints, like for the salespeople who are watching it, maybe some more hints that close the distance between no talk and the first stories?
Well, what I'm trying to do is teach people not to quote unquote sell, but to help people buy.
Yeah.
People love to buy, but they hate the pressure of feeling sold. And I don't know about in Russia, but in the United States, the sales profession has still got a bad reputation. Most people have come away from encounters with salespeople feeling pressured into making a decision too fast, or into doing something that they regretted fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And so when two strangers come together, the ultimate difficulty in sales is connecting with strangers. It's building trust and connection with strangers very quickly. Excuse me. And the first step in a buy cycle is curiosity. And to me, most of the people out there in the marketplace who should be looking at what I do aren't looking.
That's true.
Right? Whatever we're selling, we can all look at that marketplace and say, wow, there's 10,000 people in that segment of the market who, if they knew what I knew, they'd buy right now. They should be looking at us, but they're not.
Uh-huh.
So how do we go and approach a stranger in a target market and somebody who we believe should be looking at us and get them to look? So, and we have about 10 seconds when we encounter a stranger. And so you already hit it this morning. The primary way to get curiosity in somebody is about their peers. So if I find out that you're a VP of sales at a networking event, I say, oh, you're a VP of sales. Can I share a quick story with you about another VP of sales I've been working with? No one has ever turned down a story about one of their peers, another HR director, another CEO, another student, another teacher, another author. So if you know the target's job title, you can quickly engage that curiosity with an offer of a story, because human beings can't resist stories. They love stories. We've been using stories for 190,000 years.
Yeah.
Most of that history, there was no written language. And so the way we all learned about tribal knowledge was from stories, from the older people. And the other purpose of stories from leaders is to inspire people to do difficult things that need to be done. That's what leadership is getting people to want to follow you and to do, and stories are so powerful for that as well.
Yeah, that's
But anyway, I think I gave you a way too long answer. Refocus me. Where do you want to go?
No, it's actually fine. The example you gave me on the networking event, it's actually what I wanted to ask. Like, if I go into the story, should it be a story connected to my product, or it should be like any story? What would you recommend on this stage of curiosity?
All right. If it's a networking event and I don't have something to sell that person, then a great personal story. Yeah, can I tell you a story about the last time I was at one of these networking events? A funny story. But if our mission is to sell people something, we have to find out, are they a candidate for what we sell?
Yeah.
So I have a lot of clients who go to trade shows. I still think trade shows are a huge waste of money, but if you're going to a trade show to set up an expensive booth and demo your product, most trade shows now can tell you in advance the top 5 job titles that are registered at that trade show.
Oh, great.
So if I'm going to a manufacturing systems trade show, they'll say, well, there's vice presidents of manufacturing here, there's purchasing managers here, there's materials managers here, there's production managers here, and whatever. So if I know that in advance, I get with my tactical marketing department and we create one great story, 60 seconds maximum for each of those job titles. Oh. Now, we're standing in front of the booth and somebody comes up and I say, hi, I'm Mike Bosworth with ABC Systems. What do you do? He says, I'm the VP of manufacturing. I go, really? Can I share a short story with you about a VP of manufacturing we're working with? And boom, it's magic.
Great.
If the story is good, if the story is good and constructed and concise, if the story has a hero, if there's a story arc, if there's emotion, if that story is good at the end of 60 seconds, the prospect thinks, wow, even though this guy's 20 years younger than me, sounds like he understands how difficult my job is. He seems pretty authentic. Sounds like he's helped other people like me. I think I'm going to go further in this conversation. Oh. So the story leads the stranger to the trust conclusions. Is this person sincere? Is he competent? Is he authentic? Does he take care of his customers? When he makes a mistake, can he admit it? You know, all these emotional decisions about trust happen in that 60-second story. That's why it's so powerful.
Great. So as I'm hearing right now, it can be different personal stories or even stories where you have helped your client or stories about your product. So the type.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Well, ideally, you're telling a story to get somebody to buy something. But, but the skill of storytelling, I mean, one of the things we do in our workshops is we go around the table and say, tell us a story that you tell in your personal life. Name it. I don't want you to share the story right now. And people say, oh, at Christmas, I tell all the young kids the night before Christmas. And at Thanksgiving, we like to tell the story of my grandfather. And, personal stories that we all tell every day. And we don't think about it, but we do it intuitively. What we're trying to do is get that same storytelling ability into the business world. We all do it in our personal lives. Some better than others, but
Okay, Mike, you mentioned actually the buy cycle, and that was really an insight for me because I haven't seen any alternatives to this in Russian market. I'm not a pro in sales. I am more focused on even storytelling, like a vehicle agnostic tool, as Paul Smith puts it. So, could you maybe a bit enlighten me on this buy cycle, just a short version of it? And my question would be posted like this: which stories do you use on each step of the buy cycle? Like, what should I tell on each stage? Could you share?
Well, the buy cycles are really unique to company, but there's really 4 phases. Phase 0 of a buy cycle is not looking, but should be looking, where we identify he's a production manager, he ought to be looking at what we do. Stage 1 is when they now are going from curiosity to a buying vision. So in the first phase of the buy cycle, we take them from curious at the end of 60 seconds to some credibility. Then we start talking, we have a dialogue, And the big one is the stranger trusts the salesperson enough that they admit a problem.
Uh-huh.
We don't admit problems to people we don't trust as humans.
True.
So that's a big victory when somebody finally says, well, you know, Artem, I am having a problem in my production. When he admits that problem to you, that's a major step of the buy cycle. So the first phase of the buy cycle, phase one, is we go from curiosity, pain, and vision.
Okay.
Second phase of the buy cycle is now they want proof that your company and your product can actually deliver on that vision. The vision sounds good,
right?
Once we have vision, most people want proof. And they also then have to figure out, well, is there any kind of a return here? If I spend $1,000, will I make $2,000? They have to calculate that.
Yeah.
And so, can I afford it? Is it worth it? Does it work? Is phase two. Phase three of the buy cycle is risk, consequences. What if I do? What if I don't? You know, the risk of doing it or not doing it. So stories can be used all through, but so the first story is who I represent story.
Yeah.
Second story is the who am I story. Why do I do what I do? That personal story.
Okay.
So we have one who I represent story. We have one who am I story, but we might have dozens of who I've helped stories. We call them customer hero stories.
Yeah.
If I've got a big product and lots of customers, and I've sold it to financial people and engineers and whatever, or I have lots of different products, I could have dozens and dozens of who I've helped stories. And that's why I like to get marketing into this mix, because somebody in a company ought to be harvesting stories from our happy customers, and put them into some kind of a repository or database for the salespeople. So because salespeople are just-in-time opportunity-specific learners. Most salespeople don't do their pre-call planning until they're at McDonald's 30 minutes before the call. All right.
Nice.
So ideally now they can take out their mobile device and say, all right, I'm calling on a CFO. Do we have any CFO stories? And the story comes up here. Now when they go in and meet the CFO, they say, can I share a quick story with you about another CFO we work with? So we want marketing to harvest the stories and package them in a sales-ready format, so the salespeople who don't like to plan ahead can grab that story on their mobile device right before they go in and make that call.
Yeah, that technology really helps us out. Great.
Yeah.
Mike, you know that what really picks me here is I've studied a lot of storytellers, and for instance, Paul Smith has a great book on Sell with a Story. I actually learned about you in this book. He referenced you, and so I started digging in. Mike Adams also has several books about it. And the reason I'm mentioning those folks is that they say that there are like more diverse types, like 7 stories with Mike Adams, 25 stories with Paul Smith. How do you feel about the different characterizations, different types? Why do they distinguish them? What's your opinion?
Well, you know, I just gave you the main 3 types for a salesperson. But if I was doing a leadership conference, then we'd have stories for the mission, the strategy, etc. If we were doing a seminar for the HR department, and they're into mergers and acquisitions, we've done workshops where we're bringing 4 different newly acquired divisions into a room. They used to all compete. They used to all hate each other's guts. So now we use stories to get them to connect, build trust with each other. And then we put them on teams. So we're going to have a breakout team we have 4 people, one from acquisition A, one from acquisition B, one from C, one from D. And with a coach, we say, all right, we're in the future. Think about a customer call we can make 1 year into the future where now we can tell a story about a customer that uses all 4 of these capabilities. In other words, let's think about future stories. So, I mean, however you want to label their stories can be used as a communication device in so many ways. We're just trying to keep it simple for salespeople.
Oh, okay. Okay. Great.
Yeah, so
I like the three types because like the 3 is the like simple but very
simple.
elegant number. So yeah.
If you're going to train salespeople, you have to make it simple.
That's true. That's true. Okay. What really excited me is you shared on an interview with I guess it was Sima on a podcast. You mentioned that you teach storytellers to teach salespeople how to listen to the buyer, and then for 60 seconds to recap. And that you've mentioned that your wife is a couple counselor,
Yeah.
which is like heart melting for me because my wife is a narrative psychotherapist, and
Okay.
she's also working with stories, and she loved the word storytending. She's like, oh my god, this is what I do.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So my question is, how can one teach a salesperson to recap everything that the the buyer said? Like, how do you teach them?
That's a great question. But the key is we teach people how to build, tell, and tend stories all using the same model.
Okay.
So in other words, once I've got a solid model, and we can take our model of green for the setting, white for the struggle, blue for the vision, for the insight, red for the results.
Yeah.
And once we teach people to use those same colors, whether it's their company story, their personal story, their customer hero stories, now on day 2 of the workshop, we shift it to, after I tell you my 60-second story, and you go, wow, this guy seems like he knows my business, he knows how hard my job is. We teach him to transition and say, but enough about me. Artem, I want to hear your story. What's going on at your place?
Yeah.
And if my story worked, now you're talking freely. Okay? Once you are talking freely, now we're going to start to tend your story. And when you give me something, especially with you could say, boy, this has been really tough for me. We would teach the salespeople, say, tell me about tough. Why is it so hard? And get the buyer talking. And we go, oh, that goes on the white card.
Great.
So because we have this color system, whenever we get some information, we know which bucket to put it in. And somehow using the right part of the brain with the colors, with the art, same model we use for telling, now we use for tending. At the end of a half an hour of tending, they can recap that thing just boom, 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 because they already, so you understand how it works? We're using the whole brain. We're using the whole brain.
That's the idea with working the framework that tells a story to tend it. That's brilliant. It's just amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why in the workshop, after we teach them story tending for the first time, when we do workshops, we teach in a big U, say 24 people, and we break them up into small groups and they go practice. So when they come back in, I say to you, Artem, whose story did you tend? And you say, well, I tended William's story. And I would say to you, recap it for me. 30 seconds, recap it in 30 seconds. And boom, boom, boom. And we go around the room and everybody goes, wow, we were all so good at recapping. But it was really because we are taking that information and placing it into the buckets with the colors, with the story arc. And so it really makes it easy to recap and then write the letter after.
Wow, that's great. That's real insight for me. Thank you so much.
And then that's where the buyer really starts saying, wow, this guy's a pro. And if I'm selling a big, expensive product to a large organization and I get in, you know, with one job title and one story and tend that person's story, and part of that story is, you said it would really help you if you could ABC. And, you know, we're getting them to visualize using our product. So now we put that whole story into an email and say, I just want to summarize our call today. Let me know if I got this right. And you lay that story out in writing. Once you get that story right, you know what that guy does? He forwards his story to every other key person on the committee in the organization, because he can't tell it as well as you did. Because, you know, it sounded really good when you recapped it for him, but he can't use that. He can't take that after hearing it once without knowing the structure. He can't repeat the story you created for him to his peers. That's why we teach salespeople to write that sucker out, send it to him, and once that thing's in writing, he goes, yeah, he forwards it to every other person on the buying committee.
Great. So, for instance, there's just a quick comment. If, for example, I'm sending a story and the person omits like a challenge or omits some context, I should ask some questions on this matter so that I just fill on the right card so that I can send it right.
Right. And if I'm your manager, and the other thing we teach salespeople to do is leave a 30-second voicemail for their manager after every call. And it's, who did I call on? What's the setting? What's the struggle? What's the vision? What are the potential results? And if you don't give me good answers on my voicemail and all those, I call you up and I say, you got to make another call on that guy. We don't really understand his struggle on that. So it helps the sales managers also do the coaching and coach the people on the tending.
Right.
Tending is much more difficult than the telling.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing is, typically the extroverts are really good storytellers, but they're lousy story tenders.
That's true.
And introverts, like my therapist wife, is a really good story tender, but they don't like telling a story. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to help the extroverts tell better stories. They're good at tending, and we're trying to help we're trying to help the extroverts tend better, and we're trying to help the introverts tell better.
Right. That's a good diversion. Okay, thank you for that. I have two more questions that I typically ask, like all storytellers, and this would be especially for sales. And the first one is, what would be your advice to a salesperson who wants to master storytelling, but he is like in the first stages of it? What would be your advice from your expertise?
The advice is, use a structure, whether you use my structure or some Mike Adams structure, whatever. You have to use a structure. The only people who don't need structure are the top 20% who do it intuitively.
Right.
80% of us need structure.
Great.
Use some model for the storytelling, and then tend by the same model that you tell. Okay,
so if I get you right, so basically a good story from the gibberish sounds is differentiated by the structure, the use of structure. So my final question would be, if there was one thing that would get a good story to become the greatest story, what one thing would it be, in your opinion?
I think the hardest thing to teach salespeople to do, especially selling complex products and services, is to create the vision And the hardest thing is to make your customer the hero instead of your product the hero. All these salespeople want to say, here's my product and it will save you money and it will make your life easier. Instead of, we have another sales trainer and he uses our product to do this and this and this. In other words, we want to make the customer the hero using our product to solve the problems rather than making us the hero or the product the hero.
Oh, that's great. That's
because if we're going to help people buy, now if you tell me a story about one of my peers who's already solved a problem that I haven't figured out how to solve yet, that solution, that vision, the blue cards, he is now able to do this. He couldn't do that before. He can now do this. He couldn't do that before. So in other words, the real power of the story is peer envy. When you tell me a story where I'm jealous because my peer is smarter than me, he or she has already solved a problem I haven't solved yet. And that peer jealousy tells you you've got a killer story.
Great. So it would be like peer jealousy and customer as a hero,
Customer as a hero. Yep.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. And that's why they're jealous, because their peer is already a hero.
Yeah. And they could become one.
And they can become one, and they want to become one, and you're the person who created that vision, and whoever creates that vision is column A.
Great, thanks. That's a great answer. I'll take that for an answer.
All right.
Okay, Mike, thank you so much. This was really insightful, and I hope you folks liked this interview. And Mike, just for the final steps, could you leave some contacts of yours so that people can contact you in case they want to keep connected?
Oh, to get a hold of me, the easiest thing is MikeBosworth.com.
Okay.
And that'll go into a website where you can, I'm also on LinkedIn at Mike Bosworth. I've got a Mike Bosworth leadership page on Facebook, so I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah, your page is great. I checked it out.
And you should check out my wife's couples counseling app called Reconcile too. There's a quiz in there on the first page about how good is your relationship.
Oh.
And after you take that quiz, we used a new vision creation technique in that quiz that I'll tell you about.
Okay.
But I want you to take the quiz on the Reconcile Workshop website. Go to the Reconcile website. You'll see the thing for the quiz, 10 questions, 60 seconds. But there's some really cool psychology that we used in that quiz.
Wow, you've intrigued me. I'll go take the quiz after we finish it up.
All right.
Thank you so much once again. This was a great pleasure, Mike. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Orton. Thank you for reaching out.